My name is Emily Carter. I'm 34 years old, and on the night of my 34th birthday, I sat alone at a beautifully decorated table reserved for 8. I had confirmed the dinner twice. My mother promised me everyone would be there. She even said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. Tonight is about you." I believed her. At 6:30 p.m., I walked into the restaurant carrying more hope than I realized. The hostess smiled warmly and led me to a round table near the window. 8 place settings, 8 glasses, 8 folded napkins, 1 birthday cake waiting in the kitchen with my name written in white, frosting. I looked around the room every few seconds, expecting the front door to open. It never did, at first. I blamed traffic. Then I blamed myself. Maybe I had written the wrong time. Maybe someone misunderstood. Maybe my phone wasn't receiving messages. By 7 p.m., the waiter gently asked if I'd like to order. While I waited, I smiled politely. "They'll be here any minute." He nodded kindly. Another 15 minutes passed. The restaurant became louder while my table became quieter. Couples laughed. Families celebrated. Someone across the room toasted an anniversary. Every few minutes, the front door opened, and every single time, it was someone else's family, not mine. At 7:40 p.m., I finally sent another message into the family group chat. "Hey, I'm here." The message showed seen. No replies. No explanation. Nothing. By 8 p.m., the staff quietly brought out my birthday cake. Anyway, not because my family had arrived, but because they felt sorry. For the woman sitting alone, they even placed 8 forks around the cake. 8 forks. 1 person. That was the moment my heart finally understood what my mind had been trying to ignore for years. I wasn't forgotten. I had been replaced. Picked up my phone and called my mother. She answered. On the 4th ring, behind her, I heard music, laughter, wine glasses clinking together, someone cheering. They weren't on their way. They were already celebrating somewhere else. "Mom," I asked quietly, "where is everyone?" She laughed, not cruelly, not angrily, just casually. "Oh, honey," she said, "we thought you'd understand." Those 6 words changed my life forever, because what happened after that phone call would force me to choose between keeping my family or finally choosing myself. For a few seconds, I couldn't speak. The noise from the restaurant disappeared. The conversations around me faded into the background. All I could hear was my mother's voice. "Oh, Emily, don't make this into a big deal." I swallowed hard. "What do you mean?" She sighed as if I were the one creating a problem. "Your brother's promotion dinner came together at the last minute. His boss is in town and everyone thought it was more important. Everyone. That word hit harder than anything else. Everyone had known. Everyone except me." I looked down at the 8 empty chairs surrounding my table, so nobody thought to tell me. There was a long pause. Then she answered quietly, "We figured you'd understand." Understand. I had spent years understanding everyone else. Understood cancelled plans. I understood emergencies. I understood sacrifices. But this wasn't an emergency. This was a choice. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one they chose. I thanked my mother for answering the phone. Then I ended the call before she could say another word. I didn't cry. Not there. Not yet. Instead, I asked the waiter for the check. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am, you don't have to pay for all 8 meals." Smiled. "We never ordered." He nodded. Sorry." Those 2 words meant more to me than anything my family had said all night. As I stood to leave, the manager walked over carrying my birthday cake. "We already made it," he said softly. I think you should still take it home. I looked at the white frosting. Happy 34th. Birthday. Emily. It suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. Thanked him and carefully carried the cake out to my car. Rain had started falling, not heavy, just enough to blur the streetlights. I placed the cake on the passenger seat and sat behind the steering wheel without starting the engine for the first time in years. I stopped making excuses for people, replayed dozens of memories, the graduation they missed, the promotion they forgot, the holidays where I cooked while everyone else celebrated, the birthdays where I bought gifts but rarely received. One memory after another, like puzzle pieces, finally locking together. Then my phone buzzed. It was my best friend, Sarah. She had been working a late shift and had no idea what happened. Her message simply read, "Happy birthday. I just got off work. Where are you?" I stared at the screen. For the first time that night, someone had actually asked where I was. Not what I could do, not what I needed to fix. Just, "Where are you?" I replied with one sentence, still sitting in the parking lot. Less than 30 seconds later, my phone rang. Sarah didn't waste time asking questions. She only said, "Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming." I almost told her not to. I almost said I was fine, but something inside me, the part that had spent years pretending everything was okay, was finally too tired to lie, so I whispered, "Okay." I had no idea that saying one simple word would become the first step toward changing my entire life. I stayed in the parking lot with the engine off. The birthday cake sat quietly on the passenger seat. The candles were still in the box, unlit. Just like the evening I had spent planning for weeks, the rain tapped softly against the windshield. As I stared at the glowing lights of the restaurant, people walked in smiling. Others walked out laughing. Families hugged each other goodbye. For a moment, I wondered what it must feel like to never question whether someone would show up for you 20 minutes later. A pair of headlights pulled into the parking space beside me. Sarah jumped out of her car before the engine was even off. She hurried to my window and gently knocked. The moment I opened the door, she looked at my face. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew, without saying a word. She wrapped her arms around me. That was all it took. The tears I had been holding back all night finally came. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet tears from someone who had been carrying too much for far too long. Sarah let me cry. She didn't rush me. She didn't offer empty advice. She simply stood beside me in the rain until I could breathe again. Finally, she smiled. "Come with me." I looked at the cake. "What about this?" She grinned. "Oh, we're definitely bringing the cake." I laughed for the first time that night, a real laugh. 10 minutes later, we pulled into Sarah's neighborhood. As we walked toward her backyard, I noticed lights hanging from the fence. Music drifted through the evening air. Then I heard voices. When I stepped through the gate, everyone shouted, "Surprise!" I froze. Nearly 20 people stood smiling. My co-workers, 2 neighbors, Sarah's parents, friends I hadn't seen in months. Someone had picked up balloons. Someone else had brought pizza. Another friend was carrying a stack of paper plates. No expensive decorations. No fancy restaurant. No perfect table. Just people. People who wanted to be there. Sarah looked at me and smiled. "When I got your message, I made a few phone calls." "A few?" She laughed. "Actually, 18. Everyone laughed with her. One by one, people came over to hug me. No one talked about gifts. No one talked about appearances. No one asked why my family wasn't there. They simply welcomed me. We placed my birthday cake in the middle of a picnic table. One of my co-workers found candles in her purse. Another borrowed a lighter from a neighbor. The candles were finally lit. As everyone sang, "Happy Birthday," I looked around the table. Every chair was filled. Not because people were expected to come, but because they wanted to. In that moment, I realized something that changed me forever. Family isn't always the people who share your last name. Sometimes, family is made up of the people who refuse to let you celebrate alone. As the candles flickered in front of me, Sarah raised her paper cup. "I want to make a toast." Everyone grew quiet. She smiled warmly. Emily has spent years showing up for everyone else. Tonight, we show up for her. The backyard erupted in applause. I looked around at every face. No one checked their phone. No one seemed distracted. No one acted like they had somewhere better to be. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. And as I blew out the candles, I made one silent wish. I wished that this would be the last birthday I ever spent trying to earn love from people who had already decided not to give it. I had no idea that before the week was over, one simple photograph would change everything. The next morning, I woke up feeling strangely calm, not happy, not angry, just clear. It was the kind of clarity that only comes after your heart finally accepts what your mind has been trying to explain for years. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat by the living room window. The birthday cake was still on the kitchen counter. Half of it had disappeared the night before. Not because it had been served at an expensive restaurant, but because it had been shared with people who genuinely wanted to celebrate me. I smiled without realizing it. Then my phone buzzed. The family group chat had exploded overnight. Photo after photo. Champagne glasses. Elegant decorations. My brother smiling beside his boss. My parents laughing. Everyone looked happy, as if the previous night had been perfect. As if I had never existed. Not a single message said, "Happy birthday, Emily." Not one. Then another notification appeared. A private message from my mother. "Don't forget to congratulate your brother. Family comes first." I stared at those words for a long time. Family comes first. For years. I believed that. I rearranged my work schedule, cancelled vacations, skipped holidays with friends, spent weekends helping everyone else. I always put my family first, but somehow, I had always come last. A few minutes later, my aunt called. Her voice sounded nervous. "Emily, sweetheart, are you feeling okay?" "I'm fine." There was a pause. Then she quietly asked, "Why didn't you come to dinner last night?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" "Your mom told everyone you cancelled your birthday because you wanted your brother to have the evening." For a moment, I couldn't even breathe. She told them. I cancelled? The truth finally became impossible to ignore. They hadn't forgotten me. They had rewritten the story. I calmly explained everything to my aunt, the reservation, the empty table, the phone call, the birthday cake, the silence. When I finished, she didn't speak for several seconds. Finally, she whispered, "Oh, Emily, I didn't know. Neither did anyone else, because my mother had made sure of that." After hanging up, I opened my phone's photo gallery. 2 pictures sat side by side. The first, 8 empty chairs surrounding a birthday cake. The second, a backyard full of smiling faces. Same cake, same birthday. 2 completely different worlds. I kept looking from one photo to the other. Then an idea quietly entered my mind. Not revenge, not anger, just the truth. I opened Facebook. Started a new post. Attached both photos. Then I typed only a few simple sentences. Yesterday was my 34th birthday. I reserved a table for 8 people. No one from my family came. 90 minutes later, my friends created a birthday celebration I'll never forget. Thank you to everyone who showed up. Sometimes the people who choose you become your real family. I read it 3 times. There were no insults, no accusations, no names, only facts, only truth. My finger hovered over the "She post" button for years. I had protected people who never protected me. Maybe, just this once, the truth deserved to speak for itself. I took one slow breath, closed my eyes, and pressed post. I placed my phone face down on the table. I had no idea that one honest post would unravel decades of carefully protected family lies. Within 24 hours, everything would change. I didn't look at my phone for nearly 2 hours. Instead, I cleaned my apartment, folded laundry that didn't need folding. I organized kitchen drawers that were already organized. Anything to keep my mind from wondering what was happening. Online, finally, my phone buzzed. Then, again and again, within minutes, the notifications became impossible to ignore. Friends from high school, former co-workers, neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in years. They all left messages that sounded almost the same. I'm so sorry. You deserved better. Happy birthday, Emily. I had no idea. Then something unexpected happened. People started sharing my post, not because it was dramatic, but because it was honest. By evening, hundreds of people had seen it. My mother had spent years carefully protecting our family's perfect image. In a single day, one truthful post had begun to crack. Around dinner time, my phone rang. Mom. I stared at the screen until it stopped. A few seconds later, she called again, let it ring. Then came the voicemail. Emily, call me immediately. An hour later, someone knocked on my front door. Not politely, not gently. 3 loud knocks that echoed through the apartment. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, my mother stood there, with her arms crossed. My father stood several steps behind her. He looked tired, older somehow. Neither of them smiled. Neither wished me a happy birthday. The first words out of my mother's mouth were, "Do you have any idea what you've done?" I answered honestly. I told the truth. Her face tightened. You humiliated this family. I didn't humiliate anyone. I posted 2 pictures. She stepped inside. Without waiting to be invited, people are talking. Church members are calling. My friends are asking questions. I looked at her quietly. They're asking questions because they saw the truth. She shook her head. No. They're seeing your version. I almost laughed. My version. I was the one sitting at the restaurant. I was the one waiting. Was the one who called. You told everyone I cancelled my own birthday. For the first time, she had no immediate answer, only silence. Then she changed directions. Exactly the way she always did. You've always been too sensitive. I knew you'd overreact. You should have understood your brother needed us. I looked at my father. Dad, did you know? He lowered his eyes. After several long seconds, he quietly nodded. I knew. Those 2 words hurt more than everything else combined. Not because he chose my mother, but because he knew and said nothing. I felt something inside me finally let go. Not explode, not break, simply let go. I walked to the coffee table and picked up my phone. My post stays. My mother's expression hardened. If you don't remove it, you'll regret it. I met her eyes. No, I already regret spending years believing I had to earn this family's love. The room became completely silent. Even my father looked up. My mother grabbed her purse. This conversation isn't over. I calmly opened the front door. It is for tonight. She stared at me for several seconds. Then she walked out without another word. My father paused at the doorway. For a brief moment, it looked like he wanted to say something, anything. Instead, he simply whispered, "I'm sorry." Then he followed her into the night. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it for a long time. My apartment had never felt so quiet, but for the first time, that quiet didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. Didn't know it yet, but my mother wasn't finished. If anything, she had only just begun, and the next move she made would force me to choose between keeping my family's approval or finally keeping my self-respect. The weeks that followed were quieter than I expected, not because people stopped talking, but because I stopped listening. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to fix every misunderstanding. I wasn't chasing every unanswered message. I wasn't apologizing for things that were never my fault. Instead, I started building a life that didn't depend on someone else's approval. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital. I spent more evenings with Sarah and the friends who had celebrated my birthday. On weekends, we had backyard dinners, movie nights, and long conversations that lasted well past midnight. No one kept score. No one competed for attention. No one expected me to earn my place. I simply belonged. A few months later, an invitation arrived in the mail. My brother's wedding, elegant paper, gold lettering, no handwritten note, no apology, just an invitation. I held it in my hands for several minutes before quietly placing it back in the envelope. Some invitations come too late. I wished him happiness. I truly did. But I knew I couldn't return to a table where I had always been treated like an extra chair. The wedding came and went. I wasn't there, and for the first time, missing a family event didn't feel like losing something. It felt like protecting something. My peace. My father began calling once a month. Never from the house, always from his truck or the garage. We talked about ordinary things, work, books, the weather. Sometimes he apologized without actually saying the words. Sometimes silence was enough. My mother never called again. I heard through relatives that she still told people her version of the story, but fewer people believed it now. The truth has a quiet way of surviving. It doesn't have to shout. Almost a year passed. My Tat's 35th birthday arrived. This time, I didn't reserve a restaurant. I didn't print invitations. I didn't confirm attendance. I simply opened my backyard. By sunset, every chair was filled. Sarah was flipping burgers on the grill. My co-workers brought homemade desserts. My neighbors laughed around the fire pit. Children ran across the yard, chasing bubbles. Someone hung string lights between the trees. Someone else turned on music. The birthday cake sat in the middle of the table. This time, there weren't 8 empty chairs. There wasn't disappointment. There wasn't waiting. There was only laughter, as everyone sang, "Happy birthday." I looked around the table. Every single person there had chosen to come. No one had been pressured. No one had come out of obligation. They were there because they cared. And suddenly, I understood something that had taken me 35 years to learn. Real love never asks you to prove your worth. Real family never makes you compete for a seat. Real relationships don't keep score. They simply show up. As the evening came to an end, Sarah handed me a small gift. Inside was a wooden picture frame. She had printed the photo from my birthday party in her backyard. At the bottom, she'd engraved 6 simple words. The people who show up matter. I smiled through tears, not tears of heartbreak, but tears of gratitude, because sometimes life has to empty your table before it can fill it with the right people. If you're watching this today and you've been fighting for a place where you're only tolerated, remember this: you don't have to spend your life earning love. The people who truly love you will never make you beg for a chair at their table. Sometimes the bravest thing you'll ever do is quietly stand up, walk away, and build a new table of your own. And one day, you'll look around that table and realize every chair is full, not because you begged anyone to stay, but because the right people chose to sit beside you.